And on July 30th, 2008, a Dallas SWAT team came into this dope house that I was living in, this apartment I was living in, and they arrested me that day. And I tell audiences everywhere I go, they didn't just arrest me, they rescued me. And they pulled me out of this world that I couldn't get myself out of. And about a year later, I went to that trial that you were talking about earlier, where a jury sentenced me to life in prison.
And what a crazy story. I mean, early days, you're an all-star quarterback, your career is tracking potentially to pro football and NFL. You end up getting a dire injury, which is, career limiting or ending, we might say, and going through that type of stress. And I would imagine mental health and depression and challenges, drugs sort of popped into all of this. And next thing you know, you found yourself on the wrong end of the law and up against a huge, huge prison sentence, which I think I was reading 65 years.
65 years, man, which is in Texas is a life sentence, man. So I got sentenced to life in prison.
That's fucking crazy. So walk me back, man. Fill in the details. Tell me the story. I mean, start at the football. So you're playing football, all-star quarterback. Start from there.
Yeah. So I was, Division I college quarterback at University of North Texas. It's 1996. I'm 20 years old. I finally gotten a starting job. Redshirt sophomore year. Third play of the game on the third game of the season. We're playing against Texas A&M. Beautiful Saturday in College Station, Texas, man. We're driving the ball downfield against the Aggies. Third play of the game, I go down. Career in an injury. And I never got to play college football again. My dream had just been cut short. And I'm at this fork in the road in life, man, where something has happened big inside of me because my football career didn't just end that day, Greg. My identity is gone now. I've wrapped my identity up into being a football player. And as you know, the psychology of that is if you lose your identity, you lose self. And I've lost self at this point. And so I did what I've done to a degree all the way up to that point in my life is I put in drugs to change the way I felt. I got into substance abuse when I was young. When I was 10, I got my first beer in me, man. Alcohol was my gateway drug. When I was 12, I smoked my first joint. But now that I'm 20 years old and my identity has been taken away from me, I've lost my college football career, I get into more hardcore drugs. I put in stronger drugs because I cannot deal with life on life's terms. And when that happens, I put in chemicals to change the way I felt. The drugs took me away from that. Yeah. Cocaine, ecstasy, pills. But I was a very functional addict. I graduated college in 1999, moved off to Washington, D.C., got a job working in the United States Congress. After that, I worked for a guy running for president of the United States. 2004, I'm back in Dallas, Texas, training to be a stockbroker for one of the biggest Wall Street banks in the world, UBS, United Bank of Switzerland. And I was at that job as a broker in 2004 that my life and the lives of so many other innocent people would forever be changed. Right. I was passed out of sleep at work one day. It's 2004, and this other stockbroker comes up. He sees me sleeping. He wakes me up. He's like, Damon, wake up. You can't sleep on this job. The markets are open. You're messing with people's money. He said, they'll fire you if they catch you sleeping here. He said, come on down to the parking garage. I got something that'll pick you up. So I go down to the parking garage with the stockbroker that day. We get to his nice little sports car, and he hands me a glass pipe with these crystal rocks in it. And man, I've never seen a glass pipe before. I'm like, man, what is that? He said, Damon, just relax. He said, it's crystal meth. He said, you're going to love this stuff. Greg, truer words have never been spoken, dude. I fell in love with crystal meth that day. Right. Meth is the most evil, most destructive, most addictive drug. I smoked it one time, and I was instantly hooked just like that. And I couldn't give everything away fast enough for that drug because, Greg, that's what addicts do. Addicts give things away. And people ask me all the time, now that I'm in a program recovery and I deal with my addiction through my 12-step program, people ask me all the time what the mindset of what it's like being an addict. And I'll give it to you. And this is like addiction 101. I'm not talking about just addicts either with drugs and alcohol. When I say addicts, I'm talking about anything you're addicted to that takes you away from the most important things in life. Could be food, money, shopping, clothes, sex, pornography, could be the Instagram, whatever it is. Addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. Addicts give up goals to meet their behaviors.
Wow. Normal people. I was going to say that is very well articulated because, to describe it in that way becomes very powerful and clear on the challenge of the addiction, right? Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah, and I was going to say, normal people, focused people, driven and successful people, they give up behaviors to meet goals. You see a behavior in front of you that's keeping you from your goal, you're focused and determined, you're going to give up their behavior to meet that. But addicts can't do that. Addicts, I say we because I'm an addict in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
We give up our goals to meet our behaviors. And that's what I did. I gave everything away, my job, my home, my car, my savings account, my family, my tethering to God. Within 18 months of the first hit of that pipe, I went from working on Wall Street to living in the streets of Dallas. I'm homeless. And I start committing crimes and become a criminal. I start breaking into cars. I start breaking into storage units. I start breaking into stores. I'm shoplifting. Then I started breaking into people's houses, Greg. This is the crime of burglary. And the crime of burglary is so serious. When I broke into people's homes, I didn't just steal their property. I stole my victim's sense of security.
Correct.
And I don't know if they'll ever get that back. Then I put together my own burglary crew. I became the quarterback all over again. This time it wasn't of a good team. It was a team of a bunch of other meth addicts, black, white, male, female, young, old, because addiction doesn't discriminate. We started breaking into so many homes in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas. They called these burglaries the uptown burglaries. They called me the uptown burglar. And on July 30th, 2008, a Dallas SWAT team came into this dope house that I was living in, this apartment I was living in, and they arrested me that day. And I tell audiences everywhere I go, they didn't just arrest me, they rescued me, and they pulled me out of this world that I couldn't get myself out of. But on July 30th, 2008, my life and the lives of so many other innocent people would forever be changed again, because that was the first day of the rest of my life. It was the day I got sober, too, by the way. That's the last time I ever did any drugs. I was smoking meth when the SWAT team came to get me. It was a day that a meth team brought me into sobriety at gunpoint. But honestly, Greg, I didn't feel rescued that day. I felt captured and caged. And about a year later, I went to that trial that you were talking about earlier, where a jury sentenced me to life in prison. The trial lasted 6 days, man. And at the end of that trial, they deliberated for 10 minutes, man. I mean, they had their mind made up. And they sentenced me to life in prison.
Take me back for a second. So, you seem to always sort of climb yourself out of these holes, right? You get yourself into Wall Street. You're running this a good job. What was it? Was it the intensity of keeping up pace, and you're sleeping? What was happening during that time?
For the majority of my life, up until the point where I got sober and then eventually get into a program recovery, because sobriety and recovery are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
I have been a very selfish person, very self-centered person. Like, what's going to be best for Damon? What does Damon want to do? And in my world, I mean, the money was the means to the vices I wanted to do in life. And that's what I chased. I chased the thrills that were out there in life. I didn't have a concern about other people. Every relationship I was ever in was a one-sided deal. I'd never been married, never had a serious relationship, because I wasn't capable of having those kind of relationships, because relationships are two-way streets. Addiction is a very selfish thing, Greg. And when an addict is in their addiction, they only care about themselves. And that was me. But I've always been a thrill, like a type A personality, very aggressive at what it is I want to do. I go after it, whether it's good or whether it's bad. I go after it really hard. And that's good if you can find something positive in your life that has the influence over you to do the good things, because now you're going to go full speed doing something good. But if you are someone like me, like that you get a hold of something really bad and you go the other direction, you go there pretty hard. I mean, like I tell people all the time, I don't do things half speed. Everything in life I've done full speed, including going to prison. I got a life sentence, my first felony conviction. I mean, I don't mess around.
Right. You know the joke about Texas, right? You're lucky you didn't get shot, right? When it came down to breaking into people's houses. So, okay, so the trial, the gavel goes down, dunk, you're guilty, life sentence. What are you thinking? What's going through your head?
Dude, it's like being kicked in the stomach. It's rock bottom, man. This is that rock bottom. It's the moment that I know that something has to change and that something is me, but I don't have any idea how it's going to change. I'm a little bit in shock. As soon as the trial is over, the sheriff is on me, the bailiff is on me, they're handcuffed me, they're dragging me out of the courtroom.
Right?
Real quick, just like you see in the movies, man. They got the handcuffs on me, they're dragging me out. I lock eyes with my mom on the way out. I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. They whisked me out of there. They put me in this little side room. It's got a bulletproof glass. They told me to wait. A few minutes later, my mom and my dad were being escorted in the other side of the glass. They decided to give my parents one last visit with me before I go to prison. They feel sorry for my parents because I just got life. Now, my dad can't even talk. He is in stunned disbelief that his son, with all this promise of life, just got a life sentence in prison. But my mom does all the talking that day. And she has this very consequential conversation with me. She tells me, she says, she says, debts and life demand to be paid. And you just got hit with one hell of a bill in the state of Texas. But you did everything it said you did. So you have to go and pay that debt to society. She said, you owe Texas that debt. She said, but you owe your father and I a debt too, because we gave you all the opportunities, love, and support to be anything you want to be in life. And she was right, Greg. I mean, I came from a great family. I tell you all the time, I didn't come from a broken home or even a split home. My mom and my dad just celebrated 54 years of marriage this summer. I had every advantage in life over everybody else. And she's telling me that day, you owe us a debt too. So here's the debt you're going to pay to us. When you go to prison, you will not get in one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type of gangs, because you're scared because you're the minority in there. She said, that's not going to work. You were never raised to be a racist, and you're not going to start now. She said, you will not get any tattoos while you're inside that prison. She's telling me, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, you come back as the man we raised, or don't come back at all. I'm floored, man. She's giving me this big ultimatum. And she's telling me, she said, do you understand this debt you're going to pay to us? I was like, yeah, Mom, I got it. But man, Greg, what do I know about prison? I'm a white middle-class guy in America, man. I don't know if I've been to prison before. So I got back to my pod in Dallas County Jail, and I'm asking all the guys that have been to the joint, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? And every guy I talked to, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, they said the same thing. You got to get into a gang. You won't survive without a gang. They said the gang is going to be your family now. But there was this one guy that was so different in Dallas County Jail, this older black man named Mr. Jackson. And Mr. Jackson is what you call a career criminal. This guy has been in and out of prison all of his life, 4 or 5 times. But he's the most positive guy I've ever met in my life. This guy had a smile on his face everywhere he went. You couldn't knock the smile off of Jackson's face. And every single morning, Mr. Jackson would come up to my cell, to my bunk, and he'd pick me up like a ray of sunshine in that dark, dark place with his positive energy. So one morning he comes up to my cell, comes up to my bunk. He's got a cup of coffee in his hands and a smile on his face. He's like, West, I've been watching how you're dealing with these knuckleheads and dummies, talking about you got to get to a gang. He said, man, don't listen to these fools. He said, if you want to keep that promise you made to your mom and your dad, then let me tell you what prison's going to be like. And so he's telling them. The first thing you need to understand about prison, he said, prison is all about race. He said, race runs the entire institution because the inmates in there want it to be about race. He said, when you walk in the door of the life sentence building, the white gangs get the first dibs on you because you're white. The Aryan Brotherhood, the Aryan Circle, the White Knights, the Woods. He said, you have to fight all the white prison gangs off. He said, after that, you'll fight the black gangs off. He said, if you survive that, you'll earn the right to walk alone. And he said, the strongest man in prison always walks alone, doesn't join a gang, the guy that stands alone. He told me the truth about fighting. He said, you don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights. You don't have to win all your fights, but you do have to fight all your fights, Greg. That means that some days you're going to win.
This is physical fights, right? This is like...
Yeah, but he's telling me this is physical fighting. That's what he's telling me I'm about to walk into. But what that really means in life, it means everything. It means you don't have to win all your fights in life. You know, sometimes you're going to win and sometimes you're going to lose. This is not just physical fights. This is life in general. Life is going to win sometimes. But you always have to get back up and keep going. Pick yourself up and keep fighting. But when he's telling me this back in 2009, man, I'm looking back at this guy like a deer in headlights, man. All this violence and terror I'm about to walk into. And that's when he's like, Wes, let me break it down for you a different way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put to the pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside this pot. He said, I'm going to put 3 things in that pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here is where I first heard the story of the coffee bean, the summer of 2009 in Dallas County Jail, exactly 10 years before John Gordon and I write the book, The Coffee Bean, in the summer of 2019. So he said, first things first. He said, if I put a carrot in the pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, what happened to the carrot?
It's soft.
I'm like, Mr. Carrot and Mr. Jackson, the carrot's going to turn soft. He said, that's right, West. He said, the carrot goes into the water hard. The water, the prison, turns a hard carrot, soft and mushy and weak. The carrot gets beat, he gets robbed, he may get killed. You don't want to be the carrot inside the prison. He said, what about the egg, West? What happens to the egg in the pot of boiling water we call prison? And I was like, well, the egg is going to turn hard, man, like a hard-boiled egg. He said, that's right, West. He said the egg has a shell that protects it physically, but inside that shell, that soft liquid core, the egg's heart becomes hardened. He said, now, if your heart becomes hardened, you become incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you become incapable of giving or receiving love inside the place you're about to go to, you've become institutionalized, and you will not come back as someone your parents recognize because your eggshell will have swastikas tattooed all over it. Then he asked me the question. He said, what about the coffee bean, West? What happened to the coffee bean in the pot of boiling water we call prison? And man, Greg, I didn't have an answer for Jackson. I didn't know what happened to a coffee bean in a pot of boiling water. And that's when Mr. Jackson, a man that looked nothing like me, did not come from the same America that I came from, didn't believe the same things I believed in life. Greg, this is a Black Muslim man from the streets of Dallas, Texas. I'm a white middle-class Catholic guy from a little bitty town called Port Arthur, Texas. But this dude, so different than me, shared with me one of the most important and transformational messages I've ever received in my life. And I tell people all the time is that, you can't close yourself off to people because of their differences. The minute you do that, different race, different gender, different ethnicity, different religion, different sexual orientation, different political views, the minute you close yourself off to people because of their differences, you start missing some of the most important lessons and some of the best friendships in this life.
Correct.
Because Mr. Jackson, that man so different than me, told me that day, he said, if I put a coffee bean in the same pot of boiling water we call prison, he said, now you have to change the name of the water to coffee. Because he said the coffee bean, West, the smallest of the three things, he said, small like you, had the power to change the entire atmosphere inside that pot because the power was inside the coffee bean. He said, just like the power is inside of you. And he told me, everything else in life is changed by the water. The carrots are changed by the water. The eggs are changed by the water. He said, not the coffee beans. Coffee beans change the water because they are the change agent. Yeah. And the last thing he ever said to me, man, before I left to go to prison, in 2009, he said, West, be a coffee bean. That's it, man. Be a coffee bean.
You know what that story is it's like, the path we walk is the path that we should be taking. And, there's that great saying where it says, life will give you the lessons you need to learn. And if you don't learn them, life will give them back to you over and over and over again. And, I love the way you describe that, like, you've got two polar opposites of human beings coming from two polar opposites in regard to environments and upbringings, and they find themselves in this cell together where this individual observes and watches what's going on and decides to step up and give and serve and help. He said, let me guide. And, I do a lot of leadership and I try to sort of really instill in people that, like, that's what your role is to guide. It's to steward and to step up.
It's amazing you picked that out too. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
But very recently I found him. I found Mr. Jackson. And
that was going to be my next question, which is like, have you kept in touch with him? Like, have you followed him?
Here's the deal. I got out of prison in 2015. We're going to fill in the blanks here, but I did 7 years and 3 months on that life sentence, and they paroled me out of prison. The parole board's like, hey, can you do out there what you've done in here? Give me a shot. Mm-hmm. So November 16, 2015, I walk out of parole. I'm on parole for the rest of my life now. No, I mean, Greg, I'm on parole to the year 2073. That's a long time to be on parole. But so when I got out, I went to Dallas County Jail, went looking for my friend, Mr. Jackson. His name's not even Mr. Jackson. I gave him the name Mr. Jackson just for the sake of the story. I mean, the only name I knew this guy in county jail was Muhammad. Mm-hmm. Because when guys go to prison and they convert to Islam, they give up their government name, their real name. Think about Cassius Clay. He goes to prison and becomes Muhammad Ali. This guy's name is Muhammad. So I go back to Dallas County Jail looking for my friend Muhammad. They're like, we need a real name. We need a birth date. We need some way to find your friend Muhammad. So I couldn't find him. But I had this story I want to tell. And I live in the South, man, in the South of the United States. I live in the South in Texas. And I know that I'm not going to go into rooms telling people I just got out of prison. And let me tell you what my friend Muhammad told me. Muhammad told me this and Muhammad told me that. That's not going to fly with these people. So I gave him the name Mr. Jackson. Everybody loved the name Mr. Jackson. So I keep on going on. I keep hoping that someday this guy's going to find me because I can't find him. And I do media interviews in Dallas, and he's from the streets of Dallas. Well, I got a letter from an inmate in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice this summer. And it says, hey, Damon, find James Lynn Baker and you find Mr. Jackson. So I got a private investigator in Dallas. Dallas is 6 hours away from where I live. I got a private investigator in Dallas. Let's go find James Lynn Baker. First, we found his criminal record, matched up everything he said. He said he'd been in and out of prison all of his life. That was true. Had him in there in Dallas County Jail in 2009 on a parole violation. The same thing he told me he was in there for, has him in there with me at the same time. This is my guy. So I don't get a chance to ever meet Mr. Jackson again because Mr. Jackson, it turns out, had died back in 2017. In May 9th, 2017, James Lynn Baker II died of a drug overdose, opiate overdose. And so now that I knew who he was, I told the private investigator, let's go find his family because I got to do something to honor this man that saved my life with this message. So he has 3 living sisters, Visha, Von Seal, and Vanessa Baker. And these are really interesting. It's a really interesting family because his sister, Von Seal Baker, was the first Dallas Cowboy cheerleader back in 1972.
Wow.
Vanessa Baker, one of his other sister, was also a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. Their mother was a pioneer in Dallas. In 1949, she was the first licensed daycare owner as a Black resident in the city of Dallas. The first daycare license to a Black resident went to their mother, who opened up a daycare in the home he grew up in. In fact, the home he grew up in is a protected city landmark in the city of Dallas. His home is a protected structure. It's a city landmark. So I call these sisters up and I say, hey, listen, I got to tell you the story about your brother and where I met him in Dallas County Jail. And they're just floored. They're stunned. I'm like, listen, I don't know what your feelings are about your brother and the choices that he made in his life, but I got to tell you, he impacted at least one life on this planet. And that one life is trying to impact the entire planet with the message he gave me. And I asked his sister, where did y'all go to high school? And because he told me it's from the very inner city part of Dallas. They confirmed it. Dallas Lincoln High School, very inner city, very Black part of Dallas. So I said, great. Dallas Lincoln it is. So I said, I'm going to put $10,000 a year into a trust for a scholarship. Every year, I want a boy or a girl that graduates from Dallas Lincoln High School, from his neighborhood, his high school, to have a better chance at life through education, because these 2 men had this chance encounter in Dallas County Jail in the summer of 2009. The family's on board. They started the scholarship up already. They got applicants applying right now. But one of the first question I had with the sisters is, where did he hear the coffee bean message? And they're pretty sure it was their grandmother. Their grandmother always spoke in allegories and metaphors and riddles and stuff like that. But one of the next questions I had, in fact, the next question was he raised around white people? And Visha, the oldest sister, she's like, that's a very interesting question. Why would you ask that question, Mr. West? I said, because here's the deal. In Dallas County Jail in 2009, I'm a white, younger guy. He's an older Black man. He's a Muslim. I'm a Christian. You know, we've got no business even talking to each other. But he crossed that line of all those barriers. He saw a person in need and went and helped that person. The same thing you picked up on, Greg. He saw someone in need and served that person. He stepped across all those different barriers that should have kept us apart, reached out the hand and pulled me out of the world that I was in, because he saw something more than just a white guy, you know? Mm-hmm. And they told me the story. They said when their mother got the daycare license in 1949, she bought this old abandoned hospital in the Black part of Dallas, South Dallas. And part of the hospital was used for a daycare, and part of the old hospital was a boarding house. And she said in that boarding house, they had poor white families that were even too poor to live in the white part of town, but they would live in the Black part of town, that boarding house. And those white families that lived there had white kids. And James Lynn Baker II, the guy that told me the coffee bean message, grew up with white children in his home because his mom had a boarding house where white families lived. When he was 9 years old, They were Lutheran. When he was 9 years old, a new pastor came to their church in the Black part of town, a new Lutheran pastor, a white man with a white family. And then other white families started joining their church. They had one of the only integrated churches in Dallas. I mean, in fact, you look at America right now. America self-segregates by religion. I mean, you look at churches in America, we self-segregate all the time. Not in the 1950s and 60s. They had an integrated church. Other white families were in. He went to church. He worshiped with other white families. He lived with other white kids. This created the mindset of the man that would reach across all those barriers that should have kept us apart and help me out one day. It's crazy, man. Wheels within wheels.
Hey, so sorry to interrupt, and thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying the show. If you like today's episode and you want to learn more about some of our programs like the Better Leader program that can change your life, go ahead and click the link below.
Amazing. You know, the world's not just divided by religion anymore and politics anymore. You know, we're divided by sex. We're divided by the pandemic. We're divided by, you know, what your beliefs are and whether they're right or wrong. And, you know, I think the problem with the world today is dialogue's removed. And your story, once again, is an example of not just helping, but, you know, the possibilities that come out of this because you engage in a conversation and you engage in dialogue. That's it, right? And with this, if we do this more, if we talk more, if we listen more, we just might be in a better place, right? What an amazing story, Damon. It's like, wow, I'm blown away. I've had shivers listening to you. It's what an intense story. Okay, so I got a couple questions. The second question is going to be, so what was your coffee bean in the prison system? So what did you do that got you such favorable sort of response, which, you know, you were let out from a life sentence after 7 years? Because I was going to ask, like, how the hell did you get out? I mean, you're sentenced to life. I mean, what'd you do in there, right? So I want you to tell us a little bit about that. But before we go there, walking into prison and back to Mr. Jackson's advice, which is you got to fight off the white gangs, you got to fight off the black gangs, you got to fight off, like, you know, all these different gangs. What was that like? How long did that take? What were you facing? And you don't have to get into crazy details, but, you know, when you say fight things off, what was that like? What happened, and how long did it take before you could walk alone?
Yeah, let's roll, man. Day one of prison, I walk in. Within the first 20 minutes, I'm going to fight with the guy from the Aryan Brotherhood. Big giant guy, big, massive, huge, bald-headed, skinhead guy. The top of his head has a swastika tattooed all around the top, and he just guy beats me from one side of the day room to the other, man. The fight's over in 20 seconds, but I fought, and I lost. And every day for the next 2 weeks, it's the same thing. It's fighting the Aryan Brotherhood guys. And I lose most of these fights, Greg. After that, it was the black gangs, just like Jackson said it would be. And I lose most of these fights too. I probably got in 36 fights those first 2 months. It took me 2 months of fighting to get out of that. I probably got in 36 fights and I lost 75% of those fights. Man, I got my ass kicked all over that prison. But I won every one of my fights, Greg, because I showed up. I simply showed up and showed that heart that they were looking to see. And, you know, 6 weeks into prison, I've been, you know, I woke on a Monday morning, and I'm living in fear. And human beings, we are not made to live in fear. Fear takes us out of this world that we're supposed to be living in. We see a different world. Anything we put to the prism of fear, we get a distorted view. And my world has changed because I live in fear. You know, fear that every time I walk out of my cell, somebody's going to say, "Hey, Wes, I want to look at you in the shower." And there's nothing homosexual about saying you want to look at a guy in the shower. What you want to look at is their boxing game, because there's no guards in the shower. There's no cameras out there. And all the blood you spill in the shower is easy to clean up. So it's a Monday morning, 6 weeks into prison. I get up and I decide the only thing I haven't used the entire time is my athletic ability to earn my respect in there. And I was blessed to be a great athlete, man. But the rec yard's been a very intimidating place for me. The rec yard, every sport was segregated by the color of your skin. It's the most segregated place I've ever seen in my life, man. You know, every sport was segregated. Sand volleyball, whites and Hispanics only, no blacks allowed. Handball, all the races could play handball. But if you wanted to play doubles and partner up with somebody, your partner had to be the same skin color. You couldn't mix the races. The weight stack, same thing, just like you see in prison movies. Man, everybody wants to push that iron in prison, and that's cool. All the races can lift weights. But if you want someone to spot you and work out with you, your partner, your spotter, has to be the same skin color. You can't mix the races up there. You can't even eat a meal on the life sentence building with another person from a different race. Not at the same table. Race is everything. That Monday morning, I went to the basketball court where the blacks run the basketball court. No white guys are allowed in the basketball court. But the reason I had to get out that basketball court to earn some respect that day is because I know in America, sports is the great uniter. Sports brings people together like nothing else can, man. In this country, before there was Martin Luther King Jr., there was a guy named Jackie Robinson. Before you could integrate a lunch counter in this country, you integrated locker rooms in this country, man. I know that sports can unite my world like nothing else can. And I got out there that Monday morning. I got myself into a basketball game. And it was the most brutal basketball I've ever played. And I had to keep going. Every single day, I had to keep showing up. It wasn't 5-on-5, Greg. It was 9-on-1, man. My own teammates didn't want me out there. But I learned two things about adversity that week on the rec yard. I spent 6 days out there playing with those guys. I learned that adversity is never as bad as you think it's going to be. And you are always capable of way more than you think you are. Because as human beings, we will sometimes allow overthinking to get in the way of overcoming. Right. And that week on the rec yard, after spending the time with them out there fighting and showing up, they circled up around me on Saturday, said, "You pulled it off, Wes. You don't have to worry about the blacks the rest of the time you're in here." And that was it. That was all the fighting that I had to do out there in the community. And I'd finally earned my right to exist out there. So 2 months after prison started, the fighting was finally over. The threat to my physical safety was gone. And now I got to work on myself to try to become that coffee bean. And Greg, it was just in time to become that coffee bean, because here's what's happening to me 2 months into prison. I'm becoming the egg. I don't want to be the egg, but I don't know how to be a coffee bean. And this pot of boiling water I'm in is toxic, man. It is hot. One of the last conversations I had with Jackson in county jail, I asked him, I said, "What am I going to find more of when I get to prison?" And Greg, his answer was profound. He was one of the most intelligent guys I've ever talked to. He said this, he said, "You're going to find more eggs, West, and here's why." He said, "The egg is the natural evolution of any human being inside of any difficult situation. And You're about to walk into one of the most difficult situations there is." He said, "The truth is you're going to probably become the egg too." And man, he was right. I was becoming the egg. I was having a conversation with my first cellmate, this guy named Carlos. Carlos is about 5'4", little Hispanic guy, a little bank robber from San Antonio, Texas. Served 99 years for a bunch of bank jobs. Good guy, bad bank robber, but a good guy. So, yeah. So it means 99, you get 99 years, you're a bad bank robber. So,
right.
But I'm telling Carlos, man, I'm like, "Carlos, man, this guy told me the story of the coffee bean, but I can't figure out how to be a coffee bean." And Carlos breaks it down for me. He said, "The reason why you can't be a coffee bean," he said, your thinking is off. Thinking. He's back to thinking again. He said, "Your thinking is so important. Your thoughts control your actions." He said, "But actions have to come from thoughts." And he said, "Right now, you think prison is a punishment when you need to start thinking about prison as an opportunity." And Greg, this is the first time I've ever heard someone try to say this prison is an opportunity. I mean, think about the world. I just fought for 2 months for my right to exist. I don't know if I can survive this world that I'm in. And this little bank robber is telling me this is an opportunity. This is a good thing. And I'm like, "Carlos, I don't understand what you're saying, man. I can't wrap my brain around that." He said, "Think about it like this, Wes. This is your opportunity. Your opportunity to work on yourself 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, become the best version of yourself possible. And it lights out that night. When the guard got done counting our cell, he peeked his head down from the top bunk and he said, 'Psst, West, what are you prepared to do tomorrow with your opportunity?'" This little dude refused to call prison a punishment, Greg. And he's my cellmate, man. Proof that in life, and I'll say in my life, I'll use an I statement. In my life, man, God has never just reached his hand down in my head and said, "Hey, Damon, guess what? You're healed." No. What God did in my life is he put people in my life. And these people, they were different all throughout life. When I was younger, they were my parents. They were the coaches. They were the teachers. People in the community of Port Arthur, Texas that raised me. As I got older in life, they took on the forms of different people, depending on what roads I went down in life. One of them is a black Muslim man in county jail. Another one is a Hispanic bank robber in prison. That's my first cellmate. Proof that God can use any messenger to get through to you, but you have to be receptive to all of God's messengers to get all of God's messages. And so the next day, my life changed. The second question you had is, how did I do it? I figured out these ways of being a coffee bean. First, I got into a program recovery. Getting into a program recovery was so important. I got into AA. To this day, I still go to my AA meetings. It's a 12-step program recovery. But it gave me the tools to live my life by. Because now, when I got into a program recovery, I had to figure out how to deal with all the baggage in my life. I found out a way to keep my side of the street clean, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I had to clean the garbage out of my life. I had to find out what my resentments were in life, what my fears are in life. Why do these things have such a hold on me? I learned about this thing called the personal inventory. You know, we can work a personal inventory in life. And in this personal inventory in life, we find out that there's 3 basic human instincts of behavior that control all the way we think. There's your instinct for social, to belong to something bigger than you. Your instinct for security, to have, financial security, everything that keeps you secure in life. Your instinct for sex. That, and not sex in a bad way, but sex is like in life. We partner up.
Right.
We have,
Right.
go ahead.
Procreate. You're like parrots, right? You find your partner and you continue.
Yeah, you partner up. You have relationships.
A very
You procreate.
biological, unconscious, primitive thing.
Yeah. Social, security, sex. These three instincts, everything that happens to us in life touches one or all three of these things. And that's it. That's all of human behavior that I learned in this program recovery. And I learned that my resentments that I have, a resentment, man.
Mm-hmm.
Resentments are dangerous, Greg. I found out resentments, man, they're dangerous. They can hold you back in life because, man, these resentments that you have, they don't usually even bother the person that you resent, the place, the group, whatever. But they bother you. They hold you back in life because the opposite of resentment is forgiveness, man. But these resentments are strong. And one of the axioms we have in a program recovery, we have this axiom we live by. Excuse me. Whenever I am disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Whenever I am disturbed, there's something wrong with me. That means that I play a role in all of my problems. And I have to find out what my role is in my problems, because that's the part I can change. That's the part I can fix. That's the only thing I can control. Right. Give you an example. Resentments. I had this strong resentment against the judge in my case, Mike Snipes, man. Mike Snipes and I used to hang out together and drink on this buddy of ours boat. And whenever his dad died, I'm at the bar that night. I buy him a shot. This is before he's a judge and before I'm a criminal. So right. Mike Snipes, I show up in his courtroom in 2008, and I've got expectations I put on another human being. It's a dangerous thing too, to put expectations on somebody. But I'm expecting him to give me some preferential treatment, maybe treat me not. No, the guy handled me, man. He handled me rough. I mean, he let things into the trial I thought should never have been let in, and I got a life sentence out of it. I carry this resentment with me when I get to prison of Mike Snipes, the judge of my guy. I still can't believe this guy gave me that sentence. But when I got into my program recovery, they said, hey, you got to get rid of your resentments. Well, he was the number one resentment I had. So I plugged him into this matrix of the personal inventory. So my resentment against Judge Snipes, did it affect my social instinct? Yeah, you bet it does, man. I'm a convicted felon, man. That changes the way everybody looks at me, man. I'm not going to fit into society again. Does it affect my security instinct? Yeah, you bet it does, man. I can't get a lot of jobs now. How am I going to get a job as a felon, man? I'll never make any money again. Does it affect my sex instinct? Yeah, you bet it does, dude. I'm in prison. There's no sex going on in prison. And when I get out, who wants to be with this convict? You know, now I'm a convicted. I've got this giant X on my back. Man, my resentment against Judge Snipes was so strong because it touched all three instincts. Mm-hmm. But the final column on the personal inventory is, what role do I play? Well, I became a drug addict. I committed crimes. I broke into people's houses. I stole people's property. I stole people's sense of security, man. I violated all the social contracts that people sign to live in a free society, and I ended up in Judge Snipes' courtroom because of the choices that I made. That day, I dropped my resentment against Judge Snipes because I didn't have any reason to resent Judge Snipes. I was the cause of all this stuff. So the personal inventory was a very big thing for me to becoming a coffee bean, because now I could take responsibility for my behaviors. I could plug in all my fears and resentments into this matrix, and I could start working through the baggage in my life. You see, we can't become the best version of ourselves until we deal with ourselves first. We have to keep our side of the street clean. We don't have to worry about what other people do with their side of the street, but we have to keep our side of the street clean. One of the most important jobs in life, Greg, is a sanitation worker, someone you would call the garbage man. Mm-hmm. Because if garbage men all over your town laid it down and went on strike tomorrow, it would take about 6 weeks maybe for your entire town for society to quit functioning in your town, because no one wants to live in an area where trash is all over the streets, where you can't see a person's house because garbage is covering up the view of the house. Society breaks down if the garbage man stops working. You break down too if you stop taking out your trash, because you are your own sanitation worker in your life, and no one can take out your soul, your emotional, your spiritual, your emotional baggage for you but you.
I love that. I love that description. You know, one of the ones I've heard before is you need to empty your basement, you know, because what happens is you put a bunch of shit in your basement and it just sits there for years and years and years and years and years. And every once in a while, you got to go downstairs to the basement and you got to like get those boxes and unpack them and move them on out, right? And figure it out. I also love what you said, which is around responsibility. That was something I learned very young and was instilled in me. And it's also one of the foundational pieces for our program, which says there is no substitute for taking responsibility. Now, we're phrasing it more in regard to your impact on people, the way you communicate with people, the way you lead people, but you basically can't blame, right? You can't sit here and blame it was someone else or was this. And I love the way you describe the personal inventory, because it becomes a real applicable tool for us to apply against, right? Which is, here are my security needs, right? Social, security and sex, and then sort of that fourth column, which is how do I play to all of these areas.
Yeah.
The other thing about your story is like and I say this all the time, a lot of what we're trying to achieve in life, resilience, success, it's an outcome. It's an outcome of our actions. It's not this thing that it's like, okay, well, I want to be more resilient. Bang, I'll do it. It's all of these things. It's fighting for the first 2 months. It's fighting every single day. It's living in that fear, but it's getting up and getting back into that ring and stepping forward. And, your moment, I'm thinking about the movie, man. I don't know if you've sold the rights to a movie yet, but what a powerful movie, specifically with the story of you as the white guy. And I think of, the movie with Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson, White Man Can't Jump.
Oh, White Man Can't Jump, yeah.
Of you walking onto the basketball court, right? Being like, all right, let's key up. Let's go.
Yeah, Lionsgate's got the option on it right now, man. I've got a screenwriter named David Aaron Cohen. He wrote American Underdog. He wrote Friday Night Lights, The Devil's Own with Brad Pitt, and yeah. So yeah, we're working on the movie deal right now. Hopefully it's going to be a 3-season deal, limited series, 8 episodes per season. So it'd be 24 hours basically to tell the whole story.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm super excited for that. Look, I know we're running out, and by the way, we got to do part 2 to this, right? Because we're just starting to crack the egg, or we're just starting to squeeze the bean, or percolate the bean. Percolate the bean is better. But let's just talk about your book and keynotes and some of the work that you're doing for the audience. So you are still going back to prison. You are doing speaking. You're doing workshops. You're doing coaching there. You're giving back into the system. Tell me a little bit about that, and then let's talk about your book as well.
Yeah. So I have, man, I speak all over the world as a keynote speaker. I mean, it blows me away that this is my life. Some of the best advice I ever got was from John Gordon, my co-author, my best friend, my mentor in life. We wrote The Coffee Bean in 2019. This is exactly 10 years after I heard the story from Mr. Jackson in county jail about the coffee bean. But we're writing The Coffee Bean. It's getting ready to come out. He knows it's going to be a bestseller, and it is. It's in every language in the world now. It's in every Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, French, Italian. It's in every language on the planet. But he's telling me, he's like, Damon, do not give up on your message of be a coffee bean. He said, you've been speaking for 2 years in the circuit. He said, you're trying to find traction right now. It's going to come. It's going to happen. But keep your message the same. He said, do not give. He said, so many people in life, not just speakers, but people in life, they don't see the results as fast as they want to. And they change their message. They change their brand. Now they confuse everybody. He said, if you do that, you really well. He said, the coffee bean guy is this guy over here. He said, stick with be a coffee bean. He said, it's going to take off. And when it does, you'll be known as the coffee bean guy. And that's going to be a very big thing to be in life. And 7 years into it now, that's really what I've become. It's finally taken hold. He told me Starbucks, man. He said, Starbucks, he said they didn't open their second store till like 11 years into it.
Yeah.
Think about that, man. You can't throw a rock without hitting Starbucks now. Correct. And it took them 11 years to get store number 2. Yeah.
I actually interviewed Howard Bahar, who was the president of Starbucks. He was under Howard Schultz.
I know Howard.
Cool. And what a brilliant dude. And he's retired now, but I was blown away at how simple the framework was for building Starbucks, right? Just in regard to people and all that stuff. So cool.
Did you tell me the story about the bananas?
He did. He did.
They did a great story, man. I've never forgotten that, man. Just like his dad teaching him that lesson. And this is like, that's the servant part, Correct,
the servant leadership part.
Servant leadership part, man.
Amazing. And servant leadership had those 11 core aspects in it, right? Anyway, we could geek out about this a little later. So the other question, so you're on parole. Can you travel?
Yeah, I can travel. And I've got to get permission from parole to travel. This summer, I went to the United Kingdom. I went to London. AIG, one of my clients, wanted me to go speak to their offices in London and speak to Parliament. I spoke to Parliament. I spoke to the House of Lords while I was there. Yeah. But the United Kingdom doesn't allow felons in. So I had to, AIG went in there and fought for me, and the United Kingdom made a special exception. And I got to take my family with me on a London vacation for a whole week and go to see places I've never thought I'd be able to see, and I can't go back. So yeah, there's some countries I can't get into.
But you did, and you got to take your family there. You're married? You have kids?
I'm married. Yeah, I've been married for 3.5 years. I have one stepdaughter. Her name is Claire. She's 11 years old.
Amazing, man. Man, I'm so happy for you, bro. You're such besides an inspirational story, like, it's you deserve to win in life. And I use the word win, not in you gain over another and you compete, but you're rewarded and you're given, the healthy, happy, successful life. And that is a representation of your actions. And what I love about your story is people can change. People can fucking change, right? And, what a scary thing going to prison. But, what you did with that, which is use this as a tool to learn and to grow. And this is, as you said, your cellmate Carlos said, you either treat this as an opportunity or that's it. And man, I just, it's back to the universe, and you might describe it as God, putting people in your life, which incredible.
It's whatever you want to describe it as. You get to pick. You get to pick your own higher power in life. No one can tell you what your higher power is.
Correct. All right. So at the end of the episode, we come to the better human question. But before we get there, go there, your book, it's obviously available everywhere. The Locker Room, How Great Teams Heal, Hurt, Overcome Adversity, and Build Unity, which I think we all need in the world today. We can find that on Amazon. Just drop your handles when it comes down to social and website. Where can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. In fact, I got another book coming out February 1st. The timing on this is great.
Perfect.
The book is called How to Be a Coffee Bean. It's the 111 Principles to Being a Coffee Bean. This is really where it's all laid out. John Gordon and I wrote, this is the third book in the Coffee Bean trilogy. It's the last one we're doing. February 1st, it comes out. You can order it right now. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold. It's available for pre-order, but it's going to have a big launch on February 1st. You can find me at damonwest.org, or my Instagram or Twitter is at damonwest7. So anywhere books are sold, and those are my handles.
Awesome. I'm going to put all that in the show notes and everything as well. I'm going to order your books as well. And after the show, I'll ask you to send me a signed copy, but we'll still order them. At the end of the episode, we come to the most important question, which I think you've answered already in so many different ways. And if the audience just listens to the story, it's going to answer this question. But what do you think we all need to do to be better humans tomorrow?
Serving. When I first got, I'm going to tell you, can you get time for one more story?
Yeah, I've got as much time as you want, my friend.
The day I got out of prison, November 16, 2015, first thing I did that day was go find my AA group, my home group. And this is where I walked in the meeting that day and I said, I need a sponsor. I need help. The 3 hardest words for a human being to say, I need help. And I went and asked for help and I got it. My sponsor, this older guy named Ray, he takes me in. He says, I'll be your sponsor as long as you're willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. And so I'm working the program, working the 12 steps with him. And about a month into it, about a month out of prison, he looks at me at a step meeting one time. And he said, Damon, you're about to go back to prison. And man, this got my attention. I'm like, what do you mean I'm about to go back to prison? I just got out of prison, but I don't want to go back to prison. He said, you're about to go back to prison because you're stuck inside yourself. You're inside of self. And no one can work a program recovery if they're in self. You have to be outside of self and be selfless. And I was like, Ray, what do you want me to do, man? I said, because at this time, Greg, no one would let me come in and speak. I mean, no schools will let me. I just got out of prison. No one wants to let me in, right? And that's what I'm telling Ray. I mean, what am I supposed to do? No one wants me. He goes, oh, now you're really in trouble. Now it's self-pity. Now you're really going back to prison. And I'm like, Ray, what do you want me to do? He said, you want to serve? He said, what you need to do, he said, you want something to do? He said, you need to go serve. He said, here's why. He said, because the only way to get outside of yourself is to go serve other people. The tenet for program recovery is service work. We have to serve other people. And he said, you're not living in reality if you think no one will let you in. He said, go to a senior citizen center, any senior citizen center there is, go to the front desk and ask them for a list of people that never get visitors. He said, they're going to give you a list a mile long because so many people have been dropped off by their families and forgotten about. He said, I want you to spend this week. He said, you promised me you go to any lengths to stay sober. He said, I want you to go this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, to a senior citizen center and spend your day visiting people that don't get visitors anymore. He said, you lived in a prison. You know what it's like to be lonely. Go spend your time visiting these people. Greg, I went to the senior citizen center that Saturday and Sunday, and I went and spent my days with people that hadn't had visitors in 10 years, man. People that were just, I mean, it gives me goosebumps talking about it. They just lit up because someone took the time to listen to them, because everyone wants to feel like they've been heard, Greg. I mean, that's the core of being a human being and communicating. We all want to feel like we've been heard. And so that weekend serving those elderly people, I learned what the secret to life was. The secret to life is servant leadership. It's serving other people. It's helping other people reach their goals in life, helping to raise other people up to a different station of life, whatever station that is for them. When we're helping other people, that's how we grow too. That's the answer to your question. Serving others.
It's amazing. And, you know, there's a lot of research and science in this, right? Which is like why it's important for teenagers to go and volunteer at a certain age when they're developing that brain, because what it does for them is it allows them to build that self-worth and that independence and that self-esteem. And they get that, which is selfish. I've got another guy that describes it. The more I give, the more selfish I am because I get so much from giving, right? And we call it others orientation in psychology, which there's a very important piece. And what you were talking about there was significance. The most important way, or one of the most quickest ways for us to treat someone with significance is to listen to them, because you humanize the person, right? They become
eye contact.
Correct. Absolutely.
Eye contact, man. Yeah. So a street person asks you for money, give them eye contact. Give them eye contact. Talk to them. Yeah. So we're very blessed in life. We have an abundance. Like my life is taken off, and my wife and I. So we have this. My stepdaughter, her daughter is 11 years old, and we take Clara we take her on vacations a couple of times a year. We just got back from Mexico, and every time we go on a vacation, I give Clara a set amount of money. I gave her $200. I'll just tell you the amount it was. Yeah. And her job, the 5 days that we're in Mexico, is to give away $200. Tips, whatever, see someone in need, find people to give that money away to. She cannot come back. She cannot even make it to the airport without, she has to give all the money away before we go to the airport on the last day. And she has to just go out and find people in need, people that look like, people that have done a service, whatever, she's in charge of the tip. I mean, dude, it's so good to see this little girl out there she's looking for ways to serve other people, man. But it's a responsibility of the parents, the step parents, to show these children what it's like to serve, So it's our job. You hit the nail on the head.
And it's parents, right? You might be the stepdad, but you're a parent, right?
Yeah.
This was amazing. We're definitely going to follow up for part 2. To sign up to the audience, Damon West, you are a legend, and what an inspiring, incredible story. You're here on this earth and this planet to do more and to give. And I'm thrilled to be able to be part of your journey and to be part of ours and be able to share this story and this experience. And I can't wait to check out the new book. So, to the audience, if you haven't gotten the first 2 books, go ahead and hop on Amazon, Damon West, check out those books, go follow him on Insta and all the other social platforms. If you're interested in him coming out and talking to your corporate teams, which I think you should, go to his information. All of that info will be in the show notes as well. Give him a ring, have him come out and talk and inspire the team, because I'm pretty sure you're inspired today just listening to Damon. Damon, thank you once again. You are the definition of the better human. And to the audience, if you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to like, don't forget to share, and we will see you next time.
Hey, thanks for listening today. And if you enjoyed today's episode, you're going to love the next one.